G'day guys and gal, I love strategy games. Growing up, Warcraft 3 and Age of Empires were my bread and butter. From there, I got onto the Total War games, starting off with Rome and buying nearly every single release since then. Not to mention that I still pop open Dawn of War 1 here and there. Needless to say, I'm a slut for playing God and directing armies to victory or death, or both. So when Crossfire Legion reached out to me and was like, "Hey Majorkill, you stupid sexy Aussie, we have an upcoming sci-fi strategy game that's launching soon. Would you like to check it out?" And my response was, after making sure it wasn't a pay-to-win or mobile game, "Fuck yeah I would, let's do this." So they sent me a game key and enough money to feed Leroy for at least a week. He's a hungry boy, that one. And I decided to check out the game and see if it matched up to the legendary strategy games in my childhood. And I'm happy to report that it did. The game has proper free-range base building, like any self-respecting RTS should. I really don't understand this trend in the industry of restrictive base building. It just confuses the hell out of me. It also has solid army diversity, with over 51 unique units spread over 3 factions for that healthy paper scissors rock combat. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Today we'll go over Crossfire Legion, not so much as a review, but more so like a let's play, checking out the game's features and showing off the gameplay. I also managed to put together an obscenely large battle that has titans in it, where the game is at its peak for your viewing. The game just came out, so if you watch this and like it, then you can pick it up easy, and if it doesn't quite float your boat, then at least the next 10 minutes will still be relatively entertaining. I hope. Let's get into it. Jumping into it, the menu might seem a bit familiar, following a similar structure to a lot of online games these days. However, Crossfire Legion has a very decent single-player experience, despite its focus on multiplayer. With 15 campaign missions and solid AI and custom matches, you can genuinely get full value out of the game without even having to go online against sweaty strategy nerds who somehow manage to optimize their build order to a point where they'll have a titan wrecking your base before you've made your first tier 1 infantryman. The campaign kicks off with you leading one of the factions, that one being the less financed but very resourceful one. It starts basic, but it gets more and more complicated as it introduces you to the various features the game has. By the 3rd or 4th mission, the training wheels are off, and it's a genuine challenge from there. The campaign is fully voice acted, with a number of fully animated cinematics spread throughout to keep you up to date with the narrative. The IP the game is based off is Cross Legions, which, funnily enough, is the second most played game ever, with around 1 billion players. What the hell? Majorkill has really moved up in the world if a franchise with 1 billion players is sponsoring me. As Crossfire is based in the not too distant future, it's very sci-fi, but still somewhat grounded. Other than the New Horizon faction, who are absolutely bonkers, and I love them. The plot synopsis is that the Blue faction is trying to keep the world safe and secure, but the Yellow faction, who we play as, also want to keep the world safe and secure, so they are attacking the Blue faction. I don't really know where New Horizon fits in, but I assume they also have the same goals. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, but I never played the original Crossfire game, which is a first-person shooter, so it's not entirely clear to me why all these peace-loving factions are blowing the shit out of each other. Global Risk, which are the Blue faction, are what you would expect America's military to be like in 50 years. Blacklist, the Yellow faction, are significantly less advanced, however they use technology in creative ways to be able to keep up, whilst New Horizon, the Red faction, are hundreds of years ahead, having weapons and vehicles that look more like they belong to the Tau Empire rather than a war on Earth. The campaign overall was very nostalgic, giving off an intense Warcraft vibe that had me smiling the whole time. I was only able to play the Blacklist missions due to the beta I was on, but I'm keen to work my way through the rest of it in the next few days, now that the game is properly out. Before I go over the gameplay features, I want to quickly highlight that the game will support modding. I don't know the extent of that modding, but they have a button for the workshop on their front page, meaning user-generated maps and maybe even units will be available, which is a huge yes. I'm a big believer that games with active and supported modding communities will live for years beyond what they normally would have. Just look at Skyrim. Okay, the features now. Before you enter a match, you get to choose which faction and units you want to come in with. You can have 2 infantry, 3 vehicles, and 3 air units. Each faction also has more than one commander that gives you special abilities you can call in. As such, even if you mirror match faction against another player, it's likely you will field different units and abilities to them. contributing to the asymmetric gameplay. Now you might be looking at those locked icons and think, God damn, I bet I have to pay real money to unlock these superior units. And the answer is no and no. All units, as far as I saw, are unlocked via a currency you earn in game. In the bot match I played, because it's hard to verse players when you're like one of the only people on the planet with early access, I still was able to earn unlocked credits and complete challenges. The units that are locked aren't even the best the faction has. New Horizons starts with its Titan and Typhon unlocked, which are 2 god tier units. The actual gameplay is straightforward. You want to build up a bit of a base and then try to capture a few unoccupied bases nearby. This increases your resource production, hence allows you to create a bigger army sooner. The game doesn't want you to focus on hectic economy management, so resource gathering is very straightforward and mostly automated. I would compare it to Warcraft 3 or a more simple Dawn of War 1 resource system, rather than the more complex Age of Empires 3 system. Regardless, once your eco is set up, you can focus on unit creation, base building, and battling. The battles are epic. With a large population system, big maps, and an abundance of resources, you can have hundreds of units attacking each other at the same time over a number of different battle zones. In my 3v3 match, we ended up in a brutal choke point as each faction funneled its armies into a kill zone. Titans dominated the ground as the sky was choked in all manners of aircraft. You can really tell the game wants you to have fun. A common strategy I like to employ in these kind of games is defense tower spam. It's always funny to do and makes you feel like you're locking down an area. Most units have special abilities, helping you to turn the tide of the battle in your favor. I know RTSs can be intimidating, however Crossfire Legion was literally made in an easy to access arcadey way. It has a diverse selection of strategies and units without making it so your micro has to be obscenely good. The controls are very intuitive. Within a mission or two, I was completely familiarized with its setup and I had no issues coordinating large battles. In its effort to be easy to understand, it also manages not to insult the player by putting on weird fun restrictions. If you want to build 10 infantry barrackses to spawn a shitload of robot ninja samurais that are great at backdooring an enemy base and ending a brutal deadlock, then go for it. If you want to spawn 5 titans to wreak havoc, go for it. Whilst the balancing system might seem a bit off, for example the Titan and the Typhon are the 2 best units that I saw by far, each faction has their own options to counter it or be just as good. For example, the Blacklist, who look about 1,000 years in technology behind New Horizon, can stealth some of their units, allowing you to sneak past the enemy's lines and attack their undefended base. Global Risk can create anti-air turrets which are really good as aircraft is very strong. After my game, I chose to unlock the Manticore tank as I wanted to expand my anti-air options. It was a huge challenge because the only anti-air units I brought to the battle originally were my own air units, so that's an example of putting together a more well-rounded roster. Crossfire Legion has good base building, great unit diversity, a well thought out and engaging campaign, multiple game modes available on launch, including a co-op mode. They have also said they're keen to support and promote modding. The game isn't pay to win, and I personally didn't experience any bugs. I was playing in 4K, 150 frames per second, while screen recording a fuck huge war, and there was no noticeable lag or stuttering. Upon launch, the game has a properly set up rank and MMR system, so you can either tackle it at a chill pace, enjoying the campaign, the co-op and custom matches, or you can go full sweat mode and see how far up the ladder you can climb. I thought I'd end up enjoying the game as it was a sci-fi RTS, but I was surprised with how much I ended up liking it. Taking elements from all my favorite strategy games when I was a kid and adding in their own flair to create something familiar and nostalgic, while still being its own thing. The game is going to be heavily supported, so I would be expecting new units, maps, and army abilities to be launched semi-regularly. Hell, I reckon that after a couple of months from now, even players who pick the same faction will have entirely different armies due to how many units will be in the game. After all, they are launching in an early access state, so by the time they've fully launched it, it's going to be an absolute beast. With all that in mind, the Steam link is below if you want to grab Crossfire Legion and give it a whirl. Massive cheers to Crossfire Legion for sponsoring this video and making a genuinely good game.